This is indeed my show. I'm glad that you can join me on this episode, on a Friday episode, and I thought I cut this off. Apparently, I did not. I'm glad that you could join me on a Friday episode. I always say, whatever you are, if you are under the sound of this voice, you have my appreciation for being here. And I thank you for joining me. We have a really good show for you today. So starting off, Laith Marouf is going to be here. Dan Kavalik is going to be here after that. For Laith, I really want to get into what is going on with Iran. I'm confused. Oftentimes, Laith has pushed back on me on the issue of Iran, so this should be very interesting for him to give me his take on it. That was one thing. Right. So it should be very interesting giving me his take on it. And what do I mean? And I guess Dan Kavalik is going to go through his book. Dan Kavalik just wrote the book on Syria. The fall of Syria and why it matters. Now, the reason that I am interested in Dan giving me a rundown is twofold. One, because there's been a lot of talk about how Syria fell. And a lot of people make the point of saying it is very complicated, which I accept. A lot of people blame the Russians. A lot of people blame the Iranians, and some people blame the Syrians. It would be interesting to talk to somebody who actually wrote the book on that and can, let's say, explain that in real terms. The second reason is Dan has been a damn good friend of the show. And as a damn good friend of the show, if he's pushing out a product, I would like him to give a breakdown of that product just in case the audience is interested in getting that product. And it's a book. So I'm saying product like it's a car, but I hope you know what I mean. For all intents and purposes, Dan has been willing to come on the show and have a conversation with all of us in order to give us his take on various news events and things that have been taking place around the world. And so if he has a book out, I want to know about it, and potentially I want to read it. Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change. That's it. He wrote the book with Jeremy Kuzmarov. This book is not even out yet. Yeah, this book is not even out till October. So he was supposed to be sending me a PDF of it. Benefits of the host. So we'll see. It should be a really good conversation, and I'm really looking forward to it. From the standpoint of what is taking place around the world, there are a few big items. One is this, which I don't entirely know what it means yet. When I hear security partnership or strategic partnership, what does that mean? Venezuela parliament approves strategic partnership agreement with Russia. What does that mean? What does that mean? Usually, and I'll make a guess when they say defensive partnership, they're talking about I will fight for you if you're attacked and vice versa. Well, Russia's on the other side of the globe, so I don't know how that would quite work. But what it may mean is we will give you all of the benefits of arsenal to defend yourself. It could mean that. When Mark comes on Monday, if indeed Mark comes on Monday, he will be able to give a better breakdown of what this actually means. I haven't read the text of it. I haven't even seen the text of it. I've been looking for it, but I haven't necessarily seen anything that went into complete detail about what's going to be involved. But obviously, there will be a working relationship between these two countries. The other thing is Iran, which I am often confused by. And it's not me just taking shots at Iran. I'm just sometimes confused by what they do. So Iran warns against attacks on nuclear sites, tables resolution at the IAEA. All right. What this document was that Iran put out boiled down to, there were a few items, but one of the main provisions in the very specific point of what the article is pointing out. Attacks on nuclear sites should be illegal. That is not something we should allow. That is a bad thing. That is something that is not in the benefit of anybody to have nuclear sites attacked. Our nuclear sites were attacked. So we are saying that that should be illegal. That was the resolution that Iran was putting out in the Security Council. Fast forward. Then you get this article, comes up, which entirely repudiates the article that came out in Tassim News. Iran withdraws. Come on. There we go. Iran withdraws resolution to ban attacks on nuclear sites following U.S. pressure. What are you doing? Whether it passes or not is almost besides the point. Why would you withdraw that resolution? And, excuse me, there's also this question of working with the E3, meaning bending over backwards to give lip service to working with the IAEA, when the best thing that Europe was going to offer was, hey, if you decide to work with the IAEA, talk with the United States, we'll give you 6 months extension on ignoring sanctions. France has already come out and said they're going to put in sanctions. The sanctions are happening either way. Iran had to know that the sanctions were going to happen either way, because all of these states are vassals of the United States. Iran has already said, we're not talking to the United States. You attacked us in the middle of negotiations. And so who do you think that these states who, when you were attacked, literally attacked with an attempted decapitation strike, turned around and attacked you? What did you think? That's what I'm saying. I'm confused by some of the things that Iran does. And I don't even know why Israel went after Pezeshkian, considering he seems to be agent for Israel. At the very least, some of the things that they do, I guess I'm saying at some point, whether they like it or not, they are stuck with this model that they're going to have to work around or between the lines. And between those lines means Europe is going to be against you. There is nothing that you can do that Europe is going to give you a good headline short of allowing yourself to be taken over by Israel. There's nothing that you could do that would allow the US to give you a good headline. And the political branch of both Europe and the United States hates your guts and would do any and everything to see the end of your existence. That you be accepted in the way that lungs accept air, because that is reality and the truth of events. So, I understand people made the argument to me earlier about why it was necessary to allow Israel to attack first. Okay, I get it. You had an internal dilemma that needed to be reconciled. I do get that. But now, there should be an understanding. There is a monster dripping in blood that is at your gates. He's at your gates once again. He has never left your gates. And he is looking to end your existence. Behave accordingly. And I'm saying this as somebody who comes from that monster's country, who know full well that we are monsters, and that our objective in this is to destroy the Iranian government. So don't tell me you have X 5,000 years of history or whatever. Don't tell me, deal with your concerns. That's my only point. Destroy your enemy. Or at the very least, maintain your integrity in regards to your sovereignty. So there is that. I don't quite understand what Iran is doing. Maybe Laith will give me a better example, a better understanding of what is taking place in the situation. I accept I could be wrong, always, because I could be wrong, just a man. But look, if everything that you've done up to this point has created all of the outcomes that you've wanted to avoid, maybe you've done something wrong. And I don't say this from a high horse. I don't say this from anywhere else. I don't have any skin in the game, short of wanting a multipolar world. and wanting the multipolar world to come into existence. And one of the pillars of that world requires, at the very least, damn well needs Iran to persist and exist, which means that I may have flakes of skin in this game. I think it's more than flakes, but whatever. But I want them to exist. And so this criticism isn't coming from a bad place. It's coming from a place of angst and concern at what I'm seeing. Now, all of this stuff, to be honest, could also be trying to kick the can down the road. We need to put this off. We need to push this down the road. We need to buy time. We need to extend the amount of time before this takes place so we can be prepared for it. Meaning they may very well know this is happening. And for all intents and purposes, everything up to this point and up until that takes place is, how do we give ourselves more time to get prepared for this eventuality? That may very well be true. So we'll see. I have concerns. That's all. I just have concerns. I have concerns. There is also another story coming out. Where is it? I get the Russell Brand after. I get the Russell Brand after we get the Dan Kavalik. I'm probably going to close a little bit early today. But the other story, IAEA, I think we hit that one. E3, we hit that one. The Charlie Kirk thing is still bubbling up. Deeply unfortunate. Jimmy Kimmel still suspended, which is pretty astonishing considering Brian Kilmeade calling for the death of the homeless. You have this humiliating event that took place. Watch this. How do you humiliate a world leader? So as you know, Donald Trump is in the UK. Well, he was in the UK. He's back to the US now. This took place. Keir Starmer is a humiliation to the UK. Humiliation to the West in general. Has the charisma of a used condom. Grandstands, hated by his own people in his own country. Is all sorts of shambolic situations that are taking place in regards to his cabinet and the people leaving his cabinet. And you get this situation with Donald Trump, who never takes or passes up an opportunity to humiliate leaders around the world, but particularly Keir Starmer. If you remember, Donald Trump was the one who told Keir Starmer, you can beat the Russians, right? And then everybody in the room laughs. Watch this.
For Prime Minister Starmer, if you feel so strongly about officially recognizing Palestine for statehood, why are you waiting for President Trump to leave the country? Why can't you just do it right now? And isn't there a risk in rewarding Hamas?
Now, that sounds like Peter Doocy. That sounds like Peter Doocy. So just to give you context of what's taking place, Peter Doocy is putting Starmer on the spot. Hey, Keir Starmer. Hey, buddy. Hey, Doocy here. Why are you waiting for Donald Trump to leave before you recognize state of Palestine? Why are you doing that? Why can't you just do it here? Huh? Donald Trump, you can just do it right there in front of Donald Trump. Why can't you do it right there in front of Trump? He puts Keir Starmer on the spot. How should Starmer answer this question? How should he answer this question? He should answer it straight and just say, well, yeah, we're doing that because a genocide is being committed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you think a weak man says? A weak man says this. If I could flip it back. StreamYard, dude. StreamYard is pissing me off. Somebody did a code update and royally fucked up. What does a weak man do in this situation? This would be in the dictionary if you had the opportunity, if it was, a definition.
Well, let me be really clear about Hamas. They're a terrorist organization who can have no part in any future governance in Palestine. And what happened on October?
And Trump pats him on the back. Good answer. Good job. Good job, buddy. Good job. Right answer. That's so humiliating. You realize world leaders, when they do stuff like that, it's to show dominance. It's just to show dominance. I am in charge. I am in control. I have the might in this relationship. I have the hand in this relationship. And you can even see the way Starmer moved after that, which he got the humiliation part of it. Just amazing. Let me bring in my man. We're joined with Laith Marouf. How you doing, Laith? You doing okay this evening?
Doing great. Thank you very much, Jamal. How's
Oh,
your homeless travels?
I know, right? Yeah, I know, right? Homeless is very true. Just Airbnbs. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and media policy law consultant focused on issues of liberation and decolonialization of indigenous nations to Arab peoples and building broadcasting capabilities for misrepresented and underrepresented communities around the world. You can find Laith on Free Palestine TV. That's on Twitter, but you can also find him on freepalestine.video. Laith, I have questions because I'm confused. So Iran puts this out on Tassim News. And it says, the IAEA warns against attacks on nuclear sites, tables resolution on the IAEA. Meaning Iran puts out a resolution saying attacks on nuclear sites should be illegal. We shouldn't do that. That's a bad thing. Our nuclear sites were attacked. So we are obviously against this, and this should be against the law. Rational, makes all the sense in the world. It condemns Israel for attacking those nuclear sites. Again, rational, against the law. Then this report comes out, which completely repudiates the first report. So right here, Iran withdraws resolution to ban attacks on nuclear sites following U.S. pressure. The U.S. raised the possibility of reducing funding to the IAEA if the resolution were adopted. Now, it's bad enough that Iran has decided to work with the IAEA up to the point where they are, I guess, sanctioned, which will happen. And they work with them to a certain degree. I mean, it's not entirely clear on whether or not they've been given the IAEA access to all of their sites. But they're in the country, they're working with some, and the entire point was to try to head off the sanctions that were coming from Western states. Explain that to me. How do you go from attacks on nuclear sites should be illegal because our nuclear sites were attacked by the US and by Israel into, okay, we're going to table this resolution for hashtag reasons? I don't get it.
Well, basically, if the United States withdraws its funding from the Atomic Agency, that's, I think it's something like 60% of the budget, as has happened with the other UN agencies that the US withdrew the funding from, like the UNESCO and others. They practically collapsed.
Okay.
Because the budget contributions for UN agencies are matched to the GDP of the country and its population size to the world population size. So anytime the US threatens a UN agency with withdrawing funding, it's literally asking to have the budget halved. So I think the Iranians wanted to show how another level of how the Atomic Energy Agency is not capable of functioning in a unbiased manner.
Mm-hmm.
And the resolution was literally reiterating what is already in the treaties, okay, in the world, in the international law and the IAEA treaties. It says you cannot attack nuclear sites. Okay, that's like using a nuclear weapon. That's what it's compared to. So the motion was kind of to reiterate what is already in the law, and what it did is that it forced the U.S. to out itself as a bully, as a a strong arm, that strong arms the agencies who are around their budget, and to show that the agency is useless itself. And I think they succeeded in that. There's a big debate, obviously, within the Iranian government and different levels of power within Iran about what to do next, given that the nuclear sites were attacked and there was a big possibility of a nuclear fallout on Iran because of those attacks. Luckily, that didn't happen. So I think, the more the United States refuses to allow normal procedures of the Atomic Energy Agency to apply to Iran, the more those within Iran that say we should cut our relationship with the agency and or we should have nuclear weapons, the more their voices are stronger, actually.
Okay, I do get that. But why does Iran care if the IAEA exists? I mean, Macron just did a video where he pointed out, my wife is a woman and the sanctions will be snapped back on Iran. So if the sanctions will be snapped back, Iran has said the non-proliferation treaty is toast. We're pulling out either way. So why do they care? If they're not going to work with the IAEA anyway, when the sanctions come back into effect, what does it matter if the IAEA exists from the Iranian perspective? It's not like they review Israel's nuclear sites.
Look, if it was up to me, and I would be a dictator, number one. If
Fair enough.
Right? Because me and you were sitting out here and we're getting angry at all these genocides on somebody. If you put me in power, I will be a dictator. I know you will be also. But so if it was up to me and I'm a dictator, I would immediately test a nuclear weapon if I was in charge in Iran. And I would, go to throw all my weapons all at once on the Zionist colony and end it. Okay. But obviously that will, lead to a nuclear war and there will be no more humanity, you see?
Right. I'm not saying they should have an unpremeditated strike. I'm trying to understand I'm trying to understand the thinking.
It cannot be a premeditated strike because the Israelis didn't stop killing Iranians and, for decades now. So there's the score to settle. So it's not but I understand what was happening in Iran even before this war. Maybe we can explain it in the simplest way for our sci-fi fans that probably watched Foundation, right? Asimov's Foundation. Okay, and Asimov's Foundation is based on Ibn Khaldun's Tri-State, his introduction to history, where he talks about the rise and fall of dynasties, states, and empires as a three-generational thing. First generation being the one that builds the empire or builds the dynasty of the family and has worked hard for it, comes from nothing. Second generation didn't live it, but saw how glory was maintained and gained so they can maintain it. And by the third generation, they didn't live it, they didn't see it. And the collapse of the dynasty, the state, or the empire begins. So Iran is now, at the end of the second generation post the revolution, beginning of the state of Iran as we know it, the modern state of Iran. So if there's already a gap between the knowledge of the new generation of Iranians of how life was prior to the revolution, under the dictatorship of the Shah, under the exploitation of British petroleum and Shell oil that was stealing and looting the gas and oil of Iran, and what has happened after the raising of people from poverty, the nationalization of resources, the strength of the country, and so forth. So if you want to have this third generation be inoculated against the collapse, you have to get them to live their own revolution that, advancement in life that they can recognize themselves that their generation has achieved something, advancement in their life in comparison to before. So what we see right now is the first and second generation of the Iranian state speaking to this third generation. And already we can see the inoculation happening with this third generation now living that 12-day war, the attacks by Israel and the United States on it. And they have watched and lived the genocide in Gaza and the attacks on Lebanon, the destruction of Syria and so forth, as well as the state of Iran is dialoguing with them when they are putting these things forward, It's not like that the Ayatollah or the leadership of the Supreme Council of Iran or the prime minister, president, whatever it is, are stupid and they don't think that they think that they can get some good stuff from the UN agencies or the West. It's just that you have to show this new generation that you tried, and you have to show them the treachery and the failures of the West to abide by its own word. And thus, when the state takes a radical position, this third generation, which is 40+% of the population, will be with the state on whatever position it takes.
I see. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. Look, again, when I'm asking these questions, it's not always, I'm looking at this from a U.S. perspective. And from a U.S. perspective, we are a country of monsters. We have a very specific objective of destroying the state of Iran. We have ran roughshod across the Middle East and have destroyed everything that we put our hands on. And so I'm looking at it from this almost zero-sum. Certainly Iran knows that we're monsters. What are they doing? And, you know, it's like behave accordingly to the fact that we are monsters. But I get your point. Your point is Iran has an internal politics that they need to manage. And part of managing that internal politics is the older generation lived under the Shah. They understand the revolution on some level in a way that the second and the third don't. And so you have to show everything that you do to say, hey, we're doing our best. This isn't us. This is them. This is the way they act. I do get that. That's fair. I do get that. And
let's take this because you brought in the US. And the US is already, the third generation is in age of supposed beginning to take control of the states. The rise of the American empire is the end of World War II, when the US basically controlled the whole world outside the Soviet Union, and then the decolonization revolutions began and the retreat of American empire. Okay, so now the US is the third generation after the imperial glory begins, and they do not see any good coming, right? This third generation doesn't know any of either the military glories of World War II and or the financial benefits that came after that of American supremacy in financial and economic terms. So this new third generation is living a horrible life. And as we see, what the US is trying to do right now with this new Trump phase is to try to either get some glory for this new generation through war, okay, and through looting the resources of other countries, somehow raise the living standards of the American third generation. Yes. And they're incapable of doing that. Similarly, Israel is having a worse crisis than even the United States with their third generation, because this third generation doesn't remember the horrors of the Holocaust that supposedly built the Zionist state and made those monstrous colonists, expel the Palestinians in 1948. Also, this third generation has the worst economic standards since the beginning of the Zionist colony, and it's not getting better. They're having to leave. Okay, so the crisis of the third generation is very pronounced in Israel. In fact, it is one of the indicators that there's no way Israel can survive this war. This war is the end of Israel. Whether it ends with a total genocide of the Palestinians or not, Israel is ending, because this third generation hasn't been able to win military glory and or advance financially. And this is with the crisis. You see all that stuff about Charlie Kirk and all the anti-gay, anti-trans, not because they really, most of those who are pushing this anti-gay agenda are like Lindsey Graham, who are actually closeted gay. But it's all about masculizing the identity, right? Because that's another thing of, by the way, Ibn Khaldun. He tells you as a philosopher that the first generation is very masculine, and now by the third generation is very feminine and looking inwards and thinking about their genitals and their feelings, right? This is a natural cycle of rise and so on. And this attacks on LGBTQ, so forth, that we're seeing is manufactured in order to try to artificially remasculinize the population.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham, who wants all of these wars and glory from these wars, and as what's her name said in court, I was told that Lindsey Graham is gay, and it was like, nobody asked that, Lord Wilmer. I know, I'm just telling you, Lindsey Graham is gay. Yeah, there's a logic to it. I would go further, though. I mean, Israel is not attacking Iran by itself. I don't believe for a moment that Israel is going to attack Iran by itself. The United States would have to get involved. Once again, it would have to get involved. And we had not Douglas McGregor, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, and he pointed out, he says, yeah, the U.S. is going to put troops on the ground, and he said that's going to be the end of the U.S. empire. We're going to lose that war, and when we lose that war, the world will fundamentally change. It would drag other powers into it that are almost forced on some level to get involved into it, and the U.S. is going to lose a military conflict in that way. So, I mean, unless you think I'm wrong, do you think that Israel is going to fight that war alone?
Israel has never fought any war alone.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of propaganda about, the prowess of Israeli soldiers or Israeli technology or Israeli weapons. But in fact, every war since 1948 was fought with the backing and unlimited supply of weapons, and even undercover soldiers that are not even Israeli, that are pretending to be Israeli, that fought them in 1948, in 56, 67, 73, 82, every war. There's no war that Israel fought on its own, and it cannot fight any war on its own, okay? The Israeli soldiers are some of the weakest soldiers on the planet, okay? This is all. And it's not, I'm not saying it because I'm an Arab and I want to put down these Israelis. Actually, I want to put them all down, but that's a different story. It's the truth. And if for one day the military supplies stop coming from the West, the Israeli military will collapse. There was a study that came out last week by Israeli media. They studied the use of air defenses during the 12-day war that Iran and the colony fought. And what they concluded is that American stationed air defenses inside the Zionist colony, the THAAD and the SAM 7 or 8, I don't remember, their most advanced SAM that is not a THAAD, shot down more than 75% of all the weapons, the Iranian missiles that were coming, that were intercepted. So the Israeli air defense systems, the Iron Dome, Arrow 1, 2, 3, David Sling, whatever they are, they all have failed, okay? So anybody that bought weapons from Israel for these air defenses have just wasted their money, basically. And so this is, in reality, what is true about all weapons produced by the Israelis. They're only hyped because they own Hollywood. It's only hyped because the American government forces its allies even to buy Israeli weapons. The American government forces its own military, industrial companies to work with Israeli military companies in order to give them contracts and to lift them and make them look like that they are actually good products.
Recently, the United Nations came out and pointed out that what everybody knew was true already, that this is indeed a genocide. Francesca Albanese said that there were more than 600, I think she said 680,000 people that had been murdered by Israel, over 300,000 of which were children, basically babies under 5 years old. Netanyahu came out, he's been very weird recently. And he came out and made the speech saying that Israel needs to become self-reliant, they need to become independent, they need to be able to build their own weapon systems and everything else. Do you think these things are related? That he sees something around the corner, he gets the sense that even the US on some level can't ultimately be trusted to back their colony?
Well, I mean, he can dream about these things. Tell me any other nation that has only 7 million as a population that is a major weapon producer.
Yes.
There's none. None on this planet are. Why? Because it's, just math. How many workers do you have? How many of them can you put in the military-industrial complex instead of in health and education and other industries, right? It just doesn't make sense. So it's impossible for Israel to be self-sufficient militarily if it's not inflated artificially, either through money, through technology being leaked to them, through workers actually being sent even. Do you think it's only Korean workers are only in the United States, the ones that are being caught by ICE right now and deported, although they have visas? They're also inside the factories of Israel, those Korean workers, right? So it's impossible. It's impossible that in a natural situation that is not artificially inflated, that Israel can be a major weapons producer or can depend on itself fully. Do you know any 7 million people population country that can produce its own jet fighters?
I do not.
No, there's none. So, and it will never happen. So it's the minute, what's clear is that the Zionist colony is doomed. Okay. The question is how much the U.S. will drag itself down with it. Before I got on air, I saw you were showing that video with Trump and Starmer, right? In that humiliation of Starmer is to show who's boss within the Germanic Anglo-Saxon sphere. Okay, that the top honcho of the Anglo-Germanic peoples is Trump. And when Netanyahu goes to the White House, he is asserting that he is the top honcho of all of the West. And you will see, that Trump in his own body language is asserting that. So the truth is that most probably, yes, the United States will drag itself down with the Zionist colony, and the West, the whole West, will drag itself down with the Zionist colony. We saw those crocodile tears of the Chancellor of Germany, right?
Humiliating for a world leader to act that way.
And his grandfather was a Nazi SSS.
Yes, that makes it even worse.
It's like, boom, So here we have the Western elite openly telling their own populace that they support Jewish supremacy, that they will die for the maintenance of Jewish supremacy. His grandfather would have died for the maintenance of white supremacy or Germanic supremacy. He will die for the maintenance of Jewish supremacy. That's what he was crying about. And so it's lunatic level of insanity that is now has a death grip on the minds of the elite in the West. And if the populace in the West doesn't revolt anytime soon, they're gonna see themselves back to standards of the 1800s in terms of economic and reputation on a global scale.
Well, the reputation is already there. We just haven't gotten there industrial. We haven't caught up yet. The Mertz thing is humiliating. I am a firm believer world leaders shouldn't cry. You need to be strong for the nation. Even if you cry at home, even if you cry before you get on that stage, don't do that stuff in public. The other thing I wanted to hit, and I am super curious on your take on this one. So Doha gets attacked. Qatar vassals harder, apparently, sees Marco Rubio, where Marco Rubio goes to Israel first, and then immediately goes to Qatar and say, hey, I need you to restart negotiations. Will Qatar do this? Who knows? The interesting part, though, was after the Arab Islamic Summit took place, I think, like 58 nations. Some were more strident than others, but ultimately they sent out a strongly worded communique without doing anything. Saudi Arabia, though, immediately the news comes out that Saudi Arabia has a strategic defense pact with Pakistan, and that if one is attacked, the other one is attacked, meaning both would have to respond to any attack that either one of those countries take. This is fascinating in the context that they just fought a war with India. And this is fascinating in the sense that Doha just got attacked, and all of these Gulf states got their realization that the United States, under no circumstances, will protect them. And as you pointed out in the last time we spoke, that ultimately they want Jewish supremacy in the region for all of these states, especially since Israel has a nuke or nukes. Give me your take on this. Is there something deeper to this? Or is it, because the argument that's being made is this is purely about Israel, that Saudi Arabia realizes that it's vulnerable, that greater Israel goes through Saudi Arabia, and that because they have nukes, that they can't fight a straight war in the way that Iran fought that war, and they needed someone else with a nuclear shield, that nuclear shield being Pakistan. Is there more to this that we may be missing on this?
Yeah, I think it's actually the total opposite, that this is a threat to Iran.
Please explain. Yeah.
This is a threat to Iran, not to Israel. Okay, because there was all that talk about number one, if Israel nukes Iran, would Pakistan provide the nuclear cover and protection to Iran by retaliating? And
Right.
so what we're seeing right now is that, remember, the last elected Prime Minister of Pakistan, Khan, was removed by a military coup, because he was getting close to Iran and to Russia, where he refused to condemn the war in Ukraine. And Khan was a Shia. Okay, there's a huge Shia population in Pakistan, and they are isolated, all because of Saudi money. I mean, the Saudis have financed specifically the Pakistani intelligence services. They finance part of the military, all to counter Iran's influence inside Pakistan. And also, another thing that you should remember is that the father of the Pakistani nuclear weapon built the nuclear weapon and the whole program and the missiles with North Korea, Syria, and Iran before he was, taken out by the Americans. Okay, and so there's a battle to make sure that Pakistan stays within Saudi and CIA control, not to go either to patriotic and or pro-Iran factions within Pakistan. And this is really a warning to Iran not to attack Saudi. It's not about Israel attacking Saudi at all. And the Americans are happy probably about this.
Really? But I understand. I never accepted that Saudi Arabia and Iran had a rapprochement, at the very least not in earnest, especially considering that all of these states low-key accepted Israel's attack on Iran, if not helped and allow it to go through their airspace and helped knock down the missiles that were coming towards Israel. So I do get that part. But I didn't think that there were open-air grievances in a way that Saudi Arabia thought that Iran would attack Saudi Arabia at any point.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a warning situation. Just saying, hey, if you do attack, look, now even the other side of your border, the other nuclear power in the region is against you now. Okay, number one. Number two is to cut the path for Iran trying to have, which Iran for the last 6 months have been approaching the military dictatorship in Pakistan, trying to build a new alliance. It helped Pakistan during its war with India. So there was a beginnings of co-work basically between the Iranian and Pakistani military, and the Saudis wanted to cut the path on that. And so you go and drop a few bags of money on a few generals, and you have a strategic alliance. Where Saudi Arabia is, well, what does Pakistan gain from a strategic alliance with Saudi Arabia? Zero. Will Saudi Arabia stop
India.
trade with India? Does Saudi Arabia have weapons to help Pakistan against India? No. Will the Saudis stop the flow of Wahhabi death squads into the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan? No. So what does Pakistan gain from this other than bags of money? Nothing.
Interesting. I assume this was more about India from Pakistan's side, that they just fought a war with India. The war could start up at any particular point. And that if Pakistan is attacked again, that Saudi Arabia would automatically be activated in order to, I suppose, attack India. Saudi Arabia has what, like 6th largest military in the world or something? Some insane amount of stuff that they've been buying from the US that they don't seem to know how to operate properly, at the very least when they were fighting Yemen. But so it's nothing to do with India. It is purely just they've been bribed.
Yeah, it's just to make sure that Pakistan stays out of any Iranian-Israeli fight. It's to also make sure that if there is a battle between Saudi and Iran, which Iran will not do, but this is what they're worried. The main enemy in the minds of the Saud family to them in the region is Iran. It's the only thing that questions their legitimacy as rulers, as controllers of the holy sites of Islam. It's the only state that calls itself a Muslim republic and has an election and so on left in the region. I mean, after the destruction of Syria, there's, so this is really all about Iran. It's nothing to do about Israel.
Interesting. Other people made the speculation that it also had to do about Yemen, that if Yemen attacks Saudi Arabia, that, again, I suppose Pakistan would get involved. That seems to have less legitimacy to me. I don't know why they would need help if they were indeed in a back and forth with Yemen, especially especially Pakistan. But I guess I can see it. I mean, part of the argument that Iran has made is if any of you assist Israel, you will also be hit, meaning we would decimate your oil fields if any of you assist Israel in a particular way. And so I guess I could see it. If another war starts, they know another war is going to start. If Saudi Arabia soft sides with Israel in that war, which, let's be honest, they probably will, at the very least knocking down missiles, then they may become a target, in which case now Pakistan is online. Do you really believe that Pakistan would attack Iran?
Look, I'm not saying that Pakistan will attack Iran, but definitely this move assures that Pakistan doesn't ally with Iran in a war against the Zionists, really, or in a war against the Saudis. The other thing that people should know is that I think something like 70% of the police in the UAE are Pakistani. Similar number in Qatar and Bahrain. They're all imported police officers. Okay, so the Pakistani state offers already all these security services to these, imaginary states in the Gulf, the Bahrain, Qatar, and the Emirates specifically. Pakistan also helped the Saudi regime crush the uprising and the revolution in 1978-79. Okay, Pakistan already sent troops to Yemen, along with Sudan, to aid the Emirati-Saudi war against the Sana'a government. So, and the Pakistani troops and the Sudanese troops got mangled by the Ansarullah, and this is why the numbers of their deaths are hidden, because they're kind of basically mercenaries that are irrelevant to the Saudis, to the Emiratis that are running this show. These are disposable soldiers, and the state of Pakistan offers them as disposable human beings, right? So, Pakistan can't really offer much in that it didn't already offer in terms of the war in Yemen. And its troops are not ready for this war. Pakistan, where it has a higher standard in its military, is the Air Force and the missile force of Pakistan.
Right.
And it's very hard to, fly your jets all the way to Yemen and, back and forth. They will need all those tankers as the Israelis do. And even, so I don't see that Pakistan also will move its jets to fight Yemen because it will need them to protect its flank with India. So that's
India,
not something that I expect
Iran.
to happen. But maybe they'll send like frontline fodder to die for the Saudis and the Emiratis.
Where did this relationship between the Saudis and the Pakistanis come from?
Well, at the end of the British rule, the British wanted to make sure that India is split, okay? And the Sauds were brought in, to finance the Islamic movement in historic India, to create a schism, okay? And of course, that was, in my mind, expected. But what was also a mistake on behalf of the not Gandhi, Nehru, Nehru, the first prime minister of India, what became India, made the mistake of he played that sectarian game, right? And in the end, this was the Saudi financing to the Muslim independent movement inside India was the reason we had the split of India into Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. And much of those, sectarian wars and troubles between India and Pakistan are all financed, by the Saudis. Those terrorists that blew up multiple things in India over the last decades that were all Wahhabi, basically trained and funded by Saudi intelligence. This is all to make sure that India doesn't develop the whole subcontinent, not only India as a state. And cannot, become another pole like China that could compete with the West. And so that's where the beginning of the relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia is, and then it carries on to the Wahhabi death squad hordes fighting the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. That all went through a partnership between the Saudi and Pakistani intelligence and military to build up a Bin Laden network that fought the Soviets, and on and on and on. This is what it is.
So that relationship has existed for years. And why now, though? Like, why come up with this contract now? So the Doha thing is just coincidence. It has nothing to do with. And I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm asking the same question over and over again.
I think the biggest driver to why now was because of that increased activities between the Iranian state and military and the Pakistani state and military during and after both the 12-day war between Iran and the Zionist colony and the war between Pakistan and India. Again, look at this. Kashmir, which is a big issue, right? For Kashmir is mainly Shia. This is the only reason that you don't see the Saudis instigating terrorist attacks in the name of Kashmir, because they're Shia. They want them to be slaughtered. They want them to be oppressed. And this is what Pakistan also sometimes has a conflict in. It wants to liberate Kashmir, but the Saudis don't allow them to use the Wahhabi death squads that their intelligence is gathered in Pakistan to help in the liberation of Kashmir. And the Saudis don't want any funding and armaments to come from Iran through Pakistan to Kashmir to help in the liberation. So in a way, almost Pakistan is willing to watch its own citizens and its own land to remain occupied by the Indians because the Saudis say so.
But if a war takes place, which it will, between Iran and Israel, it's only a matter of time. That doesn't stop the Pakistanis from aiding, supporting, doing some way to assist, especially if Saudi Arabia stays out of it. I hope that makes sense. I get your point that part of this and the reason that they're doing this has everything to do with this notion of you're getting too close to Iran. We need that to stop. Here's a bunch of money. We need you to sign a defensive contract with us. And if a war ever sparks off where, let's say, Iran hits our oil fields, you would immediately, ideally, under the terms of the defense pact, somehow get involved. I get that. But let's say Saudi Arabia doesn't get involved, and it's between Israel and Iran. That doesn't stop Pakistan, or does Saudi Arabia just not care at that point? But you would think that the U.S. would care. Like, meaning the U.S. has a very close relationship with the Pakistani military. This is a lot of chess, five-dimensional chess, in regards to what each side wants politically, militarily, and the things that they're doing to try to get what they want in this case. Wow.
Yeah, Imran Khan was, I think the courts just ordered his release. We'll see if he gets released.
He's not.
And if he gets released, that's the biggest blow to the Americans and the Saudis and the Israelis in Pakistan if he gets back in power.
Because he would have done something differently, correct? Like he would have been more aggressive in assisting Iran in any kind of conflict like this. Or do you think?
I think it would have been aggressive on Gaza even. This is the difference. And Imran Khan would have had also the population behind him.
Yeah.
This is why they need the military junta to stay in power as long as possible in Pakistan. They will not allow an election to happen in Pakistan because they're scared that even if Imran Khan is not allowed to run, that somebody similar to him will take power and will shift the positionality of the state. So, you know, I personally don't think that Iran will attack Saudi, and if we get back to a open war between the Zionist colony and Iran, I don't know where Pakistan will stand. As long as there's this military dictatorship there, I don't see them aiding Iran at all in a war.
When they were giving voice to it, so they were just giving voice because their population was so against Israel. Is that what it was? I mean, because that was the way I felt about Qatar. They protested very loudly. Look at our military armaments. Oh, we're very angry that Israel did this. But ultimately, it didn't matter at all. And they knew the United States was involved, and yet Rubio showed up in Qatar. So it's a lot of this stuff, just loudly proclaiming, loudly protesting because of their populations being completely against what either the political dictatorships are, their direction. Like, to explain what I mean by this, during the war, where Iran and Pakistan were going back, when Iran and Israel were fighting, Pakistan was very loudly putting out statements like, if you need a nuke, we'll give you a nuke. We got your back. We're supporting you all the way. We're backing you 100%. Is that just for the population consumption?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, but it's also, I think there was warnings to Israel not to use a nuclear weapon on Iran, nor to cause a nuclear fallout from an attack on a nuclear reactor in Iran, because that nuclear fallout would have covered much of Pakistan. It's the next country down the wind from Iran, and Pakistan, their cultivation fields would have been all polluted, and their water sources. And this is a country that's already on the brink in terms of shortages in food and water. And there would have been mass death casualties in Pakistan, and riots and mass migration. You don't know what it would have caused. So that was a warning to the Israelis about, look, this is the limit. Do what you want with Iran, but don't get us into a situation where we're going to have to do something. And I think everybody understood that way.
Last question. It is a rumor. I'll say it's a rumor that Netanyahu went to Trump administration and said, we are going to use nukes. Effectively, we need this war to stop. And the Trump administration had apparently been begging the Iranians, we need you to stop, please stop, please stop, at the point where they were seeing the damage that Israel was taking in that war. And Netanyahu goes to Trump and says, we're going to use nukes if you don't do something, in which case the United States tells Iran, hey, we're going to bomb your sites, effectively get your nuclear material out, and we'll allow you to bomb us, so we call it a day. Did you hear that? And do you believe that story?
Look, there was finally all this satellite imagery coming out of the sites that Iran and Yemen targeted in the Zionist colony over the either the 12-day war or over the various truthful promise 1, 2, and so on, and the Yemeni actions. And there's mass destruction in the military sites of the Zionist colony, mass destruction. And so the effectiveness of the American and Israeli air defenses by the 6th or 7th day in the war had fallen down to 40% effectiveness of shooting down. And so by the 12th day, it was much lower, something like 20-somewhat%. So a few more days, there would have been zero possibility of intercepting the projectiles fired by the Iranians. So yes, it was a very desperate moment for the Israelis. And yes, the Israelis did tell the Americans that they're getting to a point where they're going to have to use a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, there's no deterrence anymore. And yes, the Americans did inform the Iranians that they're going to attack these specific sites, get your stuff out of it, because by that point also Pakistan said nuclear fallout means nuclear war to the Americans, to everybody. If we're irradiated, we're going to irradiate Israel too, right?
Wow.
And it's yeah, so I think, all of this, of course, will be at one point proven through the archives that will come out,
Yeah.
But I think it's good that you brought this up, because it will help everybody understand why did the axis of resistance not clobber the Zionist colony altogether on October 7th? And the logical answer is because we would have all been living right now a nuclear winter. Okay, so the only thing that the axis of resistance can do is drag this as long as possible until the Zionist colony collapses internally and or its external support collapses, and therefore it ends by itself without getting us to that nuclear winter situation where all of humanity is dead.
Laith, you're always awesome. I always learn something in these conversations, which is why I enjoy having it with you. Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it. Laith Marouf, award-winning multimedia producer, media policy law consultant. You can find him at Free Palestine TV on Twitter, and also freepalestine.video on the web. You have a safe day, man. Thank you for this, Laith.
See you soon.
Alrighty, bye-bye. All right. Fantastic breakdown as normal by Laith. We are going to go from one damn good guest to another damn good guest. We have the man himself, Dan Kavalik. How you doing, Dan? You doing okay this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing okay. I'm doing well. I'm sorry for the noise of prayers that take place in the background. They go on 5 times a day, I think.
Oh, I love
the
it.
Only time
I love that. Yeah, no, I love that. In the
I am
Muslim
perfectly
world.
okay with it normally, just not during the show, because it's like, dude, you're interrupting my show.
Yeah.
But the only time that bothers me at 4 in the morning. At 4 in the morning, when they start tuning up, oh man, it is like a chorus tuning up where everybody's off key, everybody's like doing their own thing, and then at a certain point, it locks into focus where all of them are hitting their notes. It's so wild. It's almost like when the rooster comes up, the prayers effectively start. It's so wild. But yeah, usually I don't mind. Usually I actually enjoy it.
It's very magical. It's very magical. It's a beautiful thing. I have a friend in the building. She actually has a clock that does that. It'll make
really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I enjoy it. I always enjoy it. Even when I was in Egypt, even when I was in Albania, like in the various Muslim countries, you can hear it. They put the loudspeaker up. So I'm on the 39th floor and I can hear it. It just comes through the windows.
Oh, wow,
even though
that's
everything is
awesome.
right. Yeah. But Dan Kavalik is an American human rights, labor rights lawyer, political activist. He previously taught at international human rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. I am happy that you're joining me, Dan. And just to show your book, this is the book that is coming out on October 1st. If you get your copies now, they would have them by October 6th, from my understanding. Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change. This was written with Oliver Stone and Laith Marouf. Well, Oliver Stone wrote the foreword. Shout out to you for getting that. And shout out to Jeremy Kozmarov for helping writing this book. This is fantastic, Dan. I'm so glad you were able to write this book. Is Syria, I've heard people make the argument Syria no longer exists. Is it fair to say that's true?
Yes, I think it is. That doesn't mean it may not rise like a phoenix at some point, but I think at the moment it's fair to say Syria is gone.
Now, how did it go? Is the next operative question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please finish your thought first.
It's fine. Well, so in December of 2024, after years of war imposed from the outside by a number of countries, including the United States and Israel, after brutal economic sanctions that left the country totally impoverished, with people having electricity about 2 hours a day, there being little food. Finally, the one of the main terrorist groups that the West was supporting to overthrow the president Bashar al-Assad took over with very little resistance, because again, the country had been so worn down. And this group, which was the Al-Aqsa Front of, not Al-Aqsa, I'm very, very sorry, Al-Nusra Front of Al-Qaeda, which renamed itself HTS, took over power. And a guy named al-Jilani, who was the head of HTS, had been the head of ISIS at one point, declared himself president. Well, as predicted by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, which is an official U.S. intelligence agency, back in 2012, they stated in this document that was classified at the time but became declassified that the West was backing Al-Qaeda in Syria, and that Al-Qaeda's goal was to set up a caliphate in Syria, meaning a religious extremist government which would tolerate no other religions except for this extreme Wahhabist religion. Well, what happened was Al-Qaeda took over, and it is setting up a religious caliphate, just as predicted. And what that means in practice is the new government and aligned forces have been murdering Alawites, which is a form of Islam. They have been murdering Druze. They have been, which is another religious sect. They have been murdering and repressing Christians, and also doing the same to Shia, many of whom left right away anyway for fear of what the new government would be like. And so this country, which historically has been a tapestry of different religions, ethnicities, it's not that anymore.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Israel's taking over huge swaths of the south. Turkey's taken over parts of the north. The U.S. still occupies 1/3 of the country in the east. So there is no nation state. that's recognizable as Syria anymore.
I guess the operative question is, how did it happen? I mean, because this creates arguments, which is why I'm glad you wrote this book. You have people who say, well, the Russians made a deal, called it quits, and left Syria to its devices. You have other people who say the military was paid off and in many cases was given fake or false orders. You have other people who say the Iranians were somehow involved in the collapse of Syria. What actually did happen? Give us yes, I know people would have to buy the book in order to get a full details.
No. I mean, I'm happy to explain. I mean, first of all, we don't focus a lot on what you're talking about is kind of how did it collapse at the 11th hour, right? And a lot of that we don't know yet, though we know some, and I'm happy to talk about that. But what we focus on is what happened in the 11 hours before that, meaning...
Please. No,
right,
I mean, all of it in general.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be specific to the last hour.
Yeah, because what happened in the 11th hour only could have happened because of the years of groundwork laid for that, right?
Yes.
The war that started in earnest in 2011, again, that was brought to Syria from the outside, led by the United States, a war in which the U.S. and Qatar and Israel and the UAE and Saudi Arabia and Turkey supported terrorist groups like the al-Nusra Front of al-Qaeda to overthrow Assad. And so you had this brutal war with Assad and his Syrian Arabic army on one side and these terrorist groups on the other. And between 2011 and I believe 2020, if I'm getting the date right, it's in the book, about 500,000 to 600,000 Syrians were killed and millions were displaced. Many within Syria, many forced to go outside Syria, mainly to Lebanon. So, and again, the terrorists were brutal. They to the extent they were able to take over towns at one point or another, they would, again, do what they're doing now in those towns. They would force people to convert to their crazy religion, or kill those people, or rape those people, or enslave those people. They destroyed antiquities going back to the Roman Empire and beyond. And so, first of all, you had this awful war, which itself helped destroy the Syrian economy, but which, of course, cost many lives and helped undermine the social fabric of the country. And then you had these economic sanctions that the U.S. imposed, dating back to the Obama administration, but then really increased under Trump with these Caesar sanctions, which, again, caused incredible immiseration amongst the population, including amongst the military. You know, the military, the soldiers, and even the brass were being paid very little because there wasn't, you know, the resources to pay them decently, and that becomes important later. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's detailed in the book. It's in 2020 that a very fragile kind of ceasefire agreement is signed between the Assad government and these terrorist groups, which are allowed to go into the region of Idlib.
Right.
And
well, correct. Let me interrupt right there real quick.
Yeah.
Why didn't Russia, Hezbollah, Syria, I mean, at that point, they had taken like 80-90% of the country back. Why didn't they go into Idlib?
Well, that's a matter of discussion. I mean, I think Assad wanted to do that. Iran and Russia, you know, I think weren't willing to, at that point, they wanted to, you know, prevent more bloodshed. It would have required a lot of bloodshed.
There was already a lot of bloodshed.
Well, agreed.
Like,
I'm just telling you what they thought, you know, because it
okay.
wouldn't have only been destroying the terrorist groups, but also it would have impacted civilians living in Idlib, right? Because the terrorists lived amongst the civilians. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was a calculus that was made, I think, in retrospect. Well, but not just in retrospect. I think it was probably a bad idea. But, right, and especially in retrospect, because it allowed these groups to continue to exist, to rearm, to get a lot of support from the West, especially Turkey and Qatar, and to ultimately take over, which is what they did, right? While the rest of the country's being starved out, while the Syrian Arab army is being starved out, the terrorists are getting support, right, from the West.
Yeah.
And so they were better armed, in fact, than the Syrian Arab army, and had these drones that were, you know, very important in their being able to take over the country. So, I mean, by November of 2024, the country was it was on its knees. And what it does appear to happen is that the military brass, high-ranking military officials, were bought off by Qatar, which again was not hard to do because they weren't making much money to begin with. And when the green light was given for Al Qaeda to, you know, advance upon the rest of the country from Idlib, the military brass, which was paid off, gave stand down orders to the army at very strategic times and locations, right? Because the grassroots, the low ranks, the main ranks in the military were willing to fight, right? The ground soldiers were willing to fight. But they were told, oh, okay, we're going to do a strategic retreat. So just retreat now. And they'd be like, okay,
following orders.
Yeah, and then Al Qaeda would advance on another city, and they'd be like, "Okay, we're going to strategically retreat again."
Oh,
And
I
by
see.
the end, they had retreated so far that the country was lost.
So it wasn't like they were these supermen, these super terrorists. It was more so.
No, they took over with almost no fight, and this took, if we're to believe the Russians and actually the son of Assad, who has spoken publicly about this. His dad sent a letter out after he left the country, went to Russia, but the letter didn't say very much. It was kind of a nothing. But his son said what happened was that, again, Assad was willing to fight. He had gone from Damascus to Latakia to oversee fighting against Al Qaeda, and is told at some point by the Russians, we can't hold the country if you don't leave now with us to Russia. You and your family will meet the same fate of Gaddafi in Libya. And so he left. And again, the son explains that he believes there was treachery within the high ranks of the military, which seems to be true. Now, so that's that story. So then there's the question of Russia and Iran. Well, why didn't they fight harder or at all at some points to defend the country? What the Russians and Iranians will say is that they were willing to defend Syria. But when they saw that the Syrian army was not willing to do it, they decided they would not do it for them. That is to say, they would fight with them, but they weren't going to be the substitute for the Syrian Arab army, right?
Yeah.
They weren't going to do it if Assad's own army wasn't going to do it. They didn't feel it was appropriate, number one. And number two, it was, it put them in a very difficult position. So, at least if you believe what they're saying, it wasn't that they abandoned the country or that they were treacherous. It was just that, again, the fix was in and they
Yeah.
saw it. So if there's a different story than that, I don't think we know it. It may never know it. But that's the story. But again, I think, to me, that's not the big story. What happened in the 11th hour is not the big story. The big story is
How it happened. Over time.
how
Yeah.
years of war and economic sanctions that could only have happened through lies about what was happening in Syria, about the nature of the Assad regime. Many
Explain
of
that
those.
part.
Well,
I'm sorry to interrupt. But
no,
explain
I
that part
mean,
to us.
the mainstream press of the West, and not just the mainstream press, even outlets like Democracy Now, which we mention in the book,
Mhm.
a lot of ostensibly leftist pundits vilified Assad and really lent support to the war against Assad, which they portrayed as some sort of popular uprising, which it never was. It was a war brought from the outside, in which about a third of the fighters fighting Assad weren't even Syrian. They were foreign fighters.
Yeah.
From all over the world. And when I say all over the world, I mean it. So, we give the figure. At one point, the ambassador to the UN from Syria explained that they had captured passports amongst the fighters, the anti-Assad fighters, from 101 different countries.
What?
That's over half the countries of the world. This was a world war against Syria. In fact, there is a book called The World War Against Syria, which we do cite in our book. But again, the mainstream press was unanimous in saying, no, this is an uprising. They downplayed the role of terrorists. In fact, they said, Assad claims he's fighting the terrorists in Syria. That's his propaganda. That's Putin's propaganda. When in fact, guess who won? The terrorists. So I guess it wasn't propaganda, was it? Right? And now the U.S. has recognized Al Qaeda as the head of Syria. And in fact, Al Jilani was in New York City, walking amongst us, speaking at the UN, right? So I guess it's also not crazy for people to have said, people like me and many others, that the U.S. was backing Al Qaeda.
Yes.
Plus, you have and at times, people like John Kerry, who was Secretary of State. No, was he Secretary of State?
Under Obama, he was. Yeah. Hillary Clinton was first, and then
he said when he was Secretary of State. Joe Biden said when he was, I believe, Vice President. They made allusions to the fact that the West was backing Al Qaeda in Syria. So again, none of that should be controversial. But again, that was all denied, and it was denied not just by the mainstream press, as I said, by a lot of the so-called independent left press, and in Syria was probably amongst the left in the U.S. one of the most divisive issues ever. And I saw this right on the ground. I saw the peace movement destroyed by the debates over Syria, because so much of the peace movement, so much of the left bought into the idea that this was all part of the Arab Spring. This was a popular uprising against Assad and should either be supported or tolerated, and versus those of us on the left who said, no, this isn't that. This is not a popular uprising. This is a regime change operation being supported by the United States and the CIA, and it must be opposed. And
Yeah.
whatever you think of Assad, that government.
He'll be back. There you are. I had infinite confidence he'd be back, but I can't hear you now. I can't hear you. Come back to me, Dan. Come back to me. Still can't hear you. Okay. All right. He'll be back. I have infinite confidence that he will be back. Yes, this was within my living memory. Free Syrian Army. There was that. Free Syrian rebels. There was that. There was this idea that they were trying to put out that these terrorists were somehow different than terrorists, and so we should back these terrorists. It is insane stuff that they were putting out. You even had a situation where the military was fighting, CIA-backed terrorists were fighting the US-backed military terrorists. It's just outrageous. Oh, Dan, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I'm trying to, for some reason, I'm not seeing you. There you are. Okay. There we are.
So
there we are.
When I was cut off, I was talking about the divisions within the left and peace movement over this. And I remember, for example, I'll give it one microcosm, kind of a good microcosm of this was in the online publication Counterpunch, where they were publishing basically what amounted was the CIA propaganda about Syria, right? But being promoted by so-called leftists, particularly of a group called the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, which doesn't exist anymore. Thank God. They were terrible. They were a right-wing Trotskyist group, and they were given a platform in various places, including Counterpunch, to spew, again, what was nothing but CIA nonsense, supporting the terrorists in Syria. And actually, the editorial body of Counterpunch started censoring people who took the other line, who were against the Western-backed operation there. Those people started not being published on Counterpunch. So they started becoming, this was after Alexander Cockburn had died, and one of the co-founders of Counterpunch, and Jeffrey Sinclair, who was good, but
he'll be back. He'll be back. Have infinite faith that he'll be back. I was published in Counterpunch once. It's unfortunate that they didn't see through that. And by the way, just to back what he's saying up, if you remember, the New York Times came out with an article the moment that Obama got out of office and was pointing out that this was one of the most expensive operations in order to get rid of Assad, that they spent billions of dollars. Here we are.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
You're perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You're perfectly fine.
I'm very sorry. So this was just a microcosm of what was happening on the left. I mean, and I'll get, in Pittsburgh where I live, the Thomas Merton Center, which was the 50-year-old Peace and Justice Center, it was very much torn apart by this debate. So this was a perfect storm for the peace movement, which really was, you know, it was already in trouble. Let's be honest, but this really helped kill it.
How did they get suckered into this? I mean, even for one, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. John Kerry, Secretary of State. They couldn't even figure out what to name the terrorists that they were using. Oh, we're going to call them Free Syrian rebels. We're going to call them
the Free Syrian Army, which were terrorists. I mean, by the way,
yes, they were just terrorists.
And the the Al Nusra Front of Al Qaeda was one of the groups that was part of the Free Syrian Army, which Obama admitted to supporting the Free Syrian Army at one point. Said those are our guys. They were terrorists. They you know, I visited Syria where they, you know, Malula, which is a historic Christian town that the Free Syrian Army tried to destroy, and it was Hezbollah and the Syrian Arab Army that defended it. But you can give numerous examples of that. Yeah, so I mean, it deserves a greater discussion. But why did people buy it? Because the left, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, has been rudderless. It really has been confused. It has been easily misled into supporting crazy things like the NATO invasion of Libya as well. Again, democracy now jumped on that bandwagon too. A lot of the left bought into this humanitarian interventionist doctrine that the liberals, that the Democrats used to justify U.S. wars, right? I mean, at least the Republicans, they're a little more honest about U.S. war aims. Like, you know, Trump said about Syria, you know, we control the oil there and we want the oil and we're going to stay there to take the oil, which is true. And Obama did the same thing, but Obama didn't talk about it in those terms. He talked about it in terms of human rights. Which was nonsense because, of course, the war in Syria totally undermined and destroyed human rights. But a lot of the left bought into that because they lost their way. They really weren't left anymore. They were really liberal, and they were willing to go along with the liberals in their crusades in these countries. And, you know, so, and, you know, and I don't know, we'll see what the future holds in terms of the debates over those types of issues in the future. I think the genocide in Gaza probably destroys any idea that the U.S. ever does fight for human rights in the world. I mean, this, of course, that genocide has now been going on through two administrations, one Democrat, one Republican.
Right.
But again, you know, the so-called left of the United States, it's just so ideologically impoverished that it can be fooled. It always you know, it always opposes the last war, but it often gets sucked into supporting the current or future war, right? I mean, it's always, oh yeah, Libya is different. It's not Iraq. And then after you see, oh yeah, Libya after the NATO invasion is now divided into at least two different countries, and slaves are being sold on the streets. They're like, oh, I guess it was really more like Iraq. And but Syria, that's not like Iraq. And then it's like, oh, now that Al Qaeda's in charge and is, you know, raping and pillaging the country, oh, I guess maybe that was more like other U.S. interventions. But it's just, it's pathetic, really. And you know,
No. Please finish that. I'm sorry. There was a pause.
Those of us who took a different line were called Assadists and Putinists and all kinds. You know, I've been getting that for years. Though we've been utterly proven right every time. You know.
Yep.
But you know, as Dostoevsky said it, you know, in one of his books, it's easier to forgive someone for being wrong than for being right. So.
How so true, so true, so true. What was Syria before all of this? I mean, I remember
it
I would
was
never.
amazing. It was an amazing place. I mean, I give this example in my book. You know, my friend
Mhm.
Roger Harris is a good guy. He's a leftist, but he's also a bird biologist, and
Interesting.
he takes people all around the world on these tours. Okay, and you know, he's taken Saudi princes and rock stars. He's taken all sorts of people around the world. And at one point, he was actually helping this U.S. State Department with one of their like emerging leaders program, in which they were taking people also around the world to, you know, do whatever they were doing. And he said 20 years ago, when he was working with these two guys at the State Department, he asked them, he says, "Well, what's the country people most like to go to?" And they said, invariably, Syria.
Really?
Everyone loves Syria. These are guys in the State Department. And it's because it was peaceful. It was and is historic, although again, a lot of that history is being destroyed as we speak. Even the Roman stones in the Christian quarter are being taken up by the government to eradicate the history of Christianity in Syria. But at that, you know, 20 years ago, all those antiquities existed, and it was very peaceful. Everyone was friendly. Even I found that in 2021 when I was there. So I was there, you know, between that peace deal in 2020 or ceasefire deal and the end in 2024. I was there twice. And even then, as poor as the country was because of the sanctions, it was a wonderful place. It was very peaceful. The people were very friendly, very kind. Um, and you could go around at night, which I did, and feel safe. And again, you know, walk the stones where St. Paul walked, and it was an amazing place, you know. And then I went back after the overthrow of Assad, and things were changing. They hadn't really reached the blood thirsty crescendo that they would a couple months after I left. But even then, you could see that, you know, sectarianism was beginning to take hold in the country. The Christians were afraid and leaving the country. The Shia had already, a lot of them had already left to Lebanon. Alawites were already being murdered. You know, so the U.S. and its partners took a country that should have been the crown jewel of the world, that should have been protected as a world, you know, I'm using a term that UNESCO uses, but as a World Heritage Site, as something all of us could enjoy and appreciate. Instead, it was destroyed,
Yeah.
and purposefully so. And I am just gobsmacked by it. This happens time and again in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, Somalia, Congo. I mean, just go down the line. The U.S. just takes these countries and breaks them and calls it democracy. And
And the
again,
public here.
that there are leftists who fall for it, I find utterly inexcusable. That's why I'm on a rant. I just was so shocked at the positions people took
Well,
about
they
that.
tried.
And also, you know, they're the same people who support Ukraine, and you know, it just goes on and on.
Those people aren't leftists. Those people are Democrats. There's a difference.
Right, but some call themselves leftists anyway. Some fancy themselves as leftists. But what is a leftist anymore? It's hard to say. I mean, in reality. So,
Yeah, I
but
just
that's
assume
where we're at.
Democrats.
But that's why we wrote this book. I mean, to try to say, you know, it's not crying over spilt milk. It's saying, look, this is what regime change looks like, and we can't keep ignoring this or supporting this.
I don't think it's crying over spilled milk. It's there's a reason that Russia has the Great Patriotic Celebration each year. There's a reason that China just had theirs. When people lose, when you have this mass loss of life and this mass loss of, let's say, infrastructure, where a lot of people get killed, you try to put a circle around it and say, this was outrageous, this shouldn't happen again. I mean, that was the whole point of never again, right? Never again should we allow people to go to the slaughter. Okay, well, why are they saying that? They're saying that because it's something that is of such gravity and magnitude in regards to the carnage that took place, that you try to circle it and say, this shouldn't happen again. This was a negative outcome. This should not have taken place. And these are the people who did it. And then when you see it happening over and over again, well, yeah, it's you have a single actor in the world that has made it its own mission to effectively destroy other countries.
Yes.
And you know what's wild about that? That goes all the way back to George Bush, not the first George Bush. From my understanding, George Bush wanted to take down Iran. And they realized that Syria was one of the main, let's say, countries that they needed to take down before they could get to Iran, in which case they started using these kind of counter operations against Syria. It might have reached this high mark by the time you got to Obama, but this had been going on even before Obama took in office. No, second George Bush W had started this.
Yes.
It's not like policy doesn't radically change between presidents. All of them had a very similar policy.
Oh, yeah. And again, Iran is on the carving block now, and I've been to Iran. And again, that's a beautiful country with ancient antiquities. And again, that will all be destroyed if the West gets its way there. Venezuela is on the chopping block. We have, the Navy now already is murdered another group of people on a ship, a second ship they've destroyed. Yep. In the Caribbean to try to provoke a response by Venezuela that would justify an invasion. There's always another regime change operation around the corner. Many think what's happened in Nepal is also Western-backed regime change. So we have to be vigilant, and we need to raise our voices against this. And that's why we wrote this book, because... but Syria is one of the more ugly ones. I mean, really, it will go down as one of the most shocking destructions of a nation.
Means to an end. One of the audience members pointed out, well, we didn't get much oil from Syria. It wasn't about the oil. I mean, you can go into that if you want, but we didn't take Syria for oil. We took Syria because it was a stepping stone to get to Iran. The oil was means to an end.
I think, there was a few reasons. I mean, I do agree. It's part of the general overall desire of the West to have dominance over the Middle East, right? It's partly that. It's partly to fulfill Israel's dream of a greater Israel, which, they see themselves as wanting to take over, huge swaths of the Middle East, including huge parts of Syria. It's partly that. There is a question about a big pipeline that the U.S. wanted to go from Qatar through Syria instead of from Russia through Syria, which is what Assad wanted. So that was part of it. Again, Trump himself did say, the U.S. is occupying, Syria to get the oil, and we're going to keep doing that. So, we're very honest about that, or he was honest about that. So, there's a lot of reasons for it. But I think, in the end, the U.S. wants to dominate the entire world. U.S., unfettered capitalism led by the United States wants to make the entire world
a market
in its image and likeness, right? And it wants to turn countries like Syria into a giant parking lot, with Starbucks and McDonald's there. In all these traditional societies, communal societies are being destroyed in the process. And that's seen as progress by these maniacs that run our country. So there's a lot going on there.
Dan, I don't think it's just the maniacs that run the country. It's also the people in the country that just agree. Like it's
Sadly.
not. It's
Yeah.
it's like if you went to Nazi Germany and you were talking to the people that were on the ground, most would agree, or most would at the very least would be neutral. It's like, well, we're Germans, we're exceptional. I mean, of course we can do this. I feel the same energy with the U.S., where it's like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. They would say, well, I mean, it's Venezuela. It's like, okay. Like, meaning they would justify this idea of going after Venezuela. Well, I mean, Trump said they're sending drugs. And so, it's okay if we attack Venezuela. Maybe it's not that bad that we take out Maduro. It's like, who the F are you? Who the fuck are you? Like, rando eating bonbons will make the argument, yeah, but it's Maduro. He's a bad guy. And they would say the same thing about Saddam Hussein. They would say the same thing about the Ayatollah. They say, oh, Iran can't get a nuke. Who the F are you? Israel has nukes. Yeah, but Iran should have a nuke. And so they would justify all of this stuff. There's, as you point out, where's the anti-war movement? There isn't one. There just isn't one. You have like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul. I don't know any that are on the left. Or I think would call themselves on the left.
I hear you. It breaks my heart.
Yeah, it'll change. There was somebody who says, I hate everything. It'll change. It has to change. This will collapse. There's no way this can keep going the way it's going. All empires fail. And they typically fail for the exact same reasons. And if you're looking at books like Peter Turchin, if you're looking at analysis of why governments collapse, we're in that arc. We are heavy in that arc. So,
well, and I agree. I mean, the empire will collapse. The sad thing is our duty is to make sure it threatens to take many, many people and civilizations down with it. And it's that we have to stop. We need to ensure that it's a collapse that is done in a responsible and the most peaceful way possible, because otherwise it's going to be ugly, and we're seeing that right now.
I don't know what a responsible collapse is, Dan. It's a collapse.
Yeah,
but I know what you mean.
The U.S. is lashing out as it collapses, right? We need that. It's that we need to resist.
I listened to, and I'll let you go after this. I listened to a history professor today, and he was given this. He was talking about the U.S. and he was given this parallel between the United States and Athens. It was riveting. And the point that he made was, in Athens, they made this kind of collection of states, kind of like NATO. And they put this money in a pot that was supposed to be there in case they were attacked by the Persians. Athens took the money and made a statue to Athena, I think he said, and then started trying to get tribute from other nations, effectively going to allies saying, you need to give us money. You need to give us tribute. You need to do this. You need to do that. And he was making this parallel to the way that Donald Trump is acting, effectively blowing up Nord Stream, damaging Germany, going to countries that are supposed to be allies, getting more money from them in this kind of mafia type way. Athens eventually gets into a fight with Sparta that the other nations back, and they get more rambunctious in regards to trying to extract tribute and money. They burn down the statue of Athena. Like, there's a level of desperation that is being displayed that we've seen in a historical context that the United States is effectively emulating up to the point where Athens loses the war to Sparta. To your point, Athens nor Sparta had nuclear weapons.
Right.
There's that.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Dan, you're fantastic. And just so the audience can see the book, it's called Syria, Anatomy of a Regime Change. This is the way the book looks. Shout out to Jeremy Kuzmarov, who also helped write this book. Shout out to Oliver Stone for the foreword. It is fantastic that you were able to get Oliver Stone. I'm so impressed by that. There we are. That's the book. It'll be out in October. I think they said they can deliver by October 6th on Amazon. So definitely check the book out. You only got a tasting of it here, a morsel, a tiny, tiny bit of it. And if you want to know how it collapsed, it wasn't the last hour. It was 11 hours before. That was the main issue. So thank you for this, Dan. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to next time.
Absolutely. You be safe. Have a good day, okay?
You too. Thank you.
All right. And, I should give him his flowers. Dan Kavalik. Dan Kavalik is an American human rights, labor rights lawyer, political activist. He previously taught at the International Human Rights, or he previously taught International Human Rights at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Shout out to Dan. Shout out to Dan. I am going to be a lazy bum today, and so I'm going to leave a bit early. By the way, U.S. Navy vet, I saw your comments. I have said over and over again that I enjoy the prayers. I actually like them. Whether I like them or not, I'm here, right? So I'm in a country that has them, and I was in a previous country that had them, and I was in a previous country that had them even before that. I enjoy it. I totally do. As a person, however, there will be annoyances. That's just being a person. And 4 a.m. is a bit aggressive. Especially when I don't finish work until like 3. And so it's like you're laying in bed, you're trying to get to sleep. It's funny. In Albania, it was the roosters. You would hear the roosters crow. In Malaysia, unfortunately, there was a security guard that was a spitter that was just gross, just completely gross. Here, the prayers I don't mind. I actually enjoy. I actually like them. They don't bother me. The one I want to go to, Russell Brand. Russell Brand. I will tell you in advance. I don't know enough about Russell Brand to hate him or like him or dislike him. I am neutral towards Brand, so no feelings one way or the other. So this is not coming out of spite, nor is this coming out of, I don't know, what do they call it? Hitting a lefty or something like that. I don't know what Russell Brand is politically. That being said, I do know enough about Brand to know that he made this conversion of sorts into love and light, or at the very least he tries to. Politics is not love and light, Russell Brand. You can make an argument to me that I would agree with you that there does need to be some kind of spiritual element in the politics that gives a guiding light in a direction of where to go. But that is not the environment to which we are working in. Charlie Kirk being perfect evidence of that. Russell Brand came out and gave his 2 cents on the whole Charlie Brand issue. British guy, talked about American issues, fair enough. I talk about issues around the world, so I'm not going to poke out on that one. But he misses the point. He radically misses the point. I'm going to play this. This is Brand talking about Kirk. And I understand that there may be something later on in this video that repudiates this position, but that would be a bit weird if he did put that in. But this is what he had to say about the Charlie Kirk thing. 50 seconds. Russell Brand, give us your wisdom.
I feel like from now on, things are going to radicalize on both sides unless some people deliberately and actively participate in creating respect and decent, good-hearted dialectic. And like that begins here, actually. That begins here. You know, you can't be disgusted, appalled, and kind of broken and confused by Charlie Kirk's assassination and then be angry and vitriolic about people that respond to it with delight. In fact, I think the test is, can you, if you're a person who admired Charlie Kirk or loved him even, be kind and compassionate when people are condemnatory? I wonder if you can. I wonder if you can. I feel like from now on, things are going to radicalize on both sides unless.
The issue with the Charlie Kirk thing, it's not that can you be kind when people are condemnative of Charlie Kirk, or for that matter, on the left, can you allow people to grieve and to be sorrowful in the way that they are giving their prayers and whatnot to Charlie Kirk. Russell Brand is missing the point. Russell Brand is missing the point. The issue is not that people are sorrowful that Charlie Kirk died. There are a lot of people out there who care deeply about Charlie Kirk, who feel some kind of way about Charlie Kirk, and send their prayers, are sorrowful, etc. I don't care. God bless. The issue that people are having with Charlie Kirk is that they are trying to mangle who he was into a saint-type figure with pictures of Jesus taking his dead body up and ascending into heaven, as if there are not oceans of videos of who that guy was, who Charlie Kirk was. Meaning, if you're saying black women are too stupid, too stupid to have a conversation with them. If you're saying that when you get on an airplane, you're concerned about whether the pilot is black or not. When you are trashing migrants, trashing the LGBTQ community, when you make that your life, not one video, you make it your life. That is who you are as an individual and as a person. And then when he drops dead from somebody putting a bullet in him, which again, they should not have done. Again, I condemn this idea of putting a bullet in somebody just because you don't like what they're saying. But when that happens, they act like they're at a funeral and pretend like he was somebody else, and even make the argument that he was some kind of civil rights leader that died for some greater narrative or greater theme of events. That's the issue. It's not about being sorrowful. It's mangling somebody who I think is a degenerate into something that is more Christ-like in the way that they are trying to think about him. They have images of Charlie Kirk shaking hands with Malcolm X. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? It's that. That's the fight that is taking place. There's several fights that are taking place over this. The politicization of it, where the Trump administration is effectively using it to crack down on free speech, going after the First Amendment and using Charlie Kirk's death as a, let's say, machination, as a rationale to go after people who effectively disagree with Donald Trump. Jimmy Kimmel is trash as a show. It is weird and strange and beyond the pale for a president to take action to get rid of that show. It is anti-American to do stuff like that. But again, what's their argument? Their main thesis, their main hypothesis is, well, Charlie Kirk died because people were attacking Charlie Kirk. Because why? Charlie Kirk was a horrible human being, as human beings go. And so we can't say things about people because it may get those people killed. And so in their mind, everybody that considers themselves Democrats and ostensibly on the left are the problem, in which case you get a political weapon that the Trump administration has been using or wants to use to go after these groups. That's outrageous. He was not a saint. He was not a good person. I don't even think he was a Christian, considering he was okay with the murder of all of these other people. He might have had a come to Jesus moment before he died, no pun intended. But let's be honest about who the person was. The fight is not over whether or not people can show sorrow, regret, feel some kind of way. Hell, there are all sorts of racists who like Charlie Kirk, right? You could see him marching in London. Fair enough. Obviously, those people exist. And obviously, those people have a hero about them. Fair enough. Nobody takes issue with the recognition of who the person was when they were alive. People take issue about trying to fashion somebody who was not a decent person into something that is more like a saint type figure or some kind of civil rights icon for racists. It's deplorable. It's deplorable. And let's be honest, there are political consequences associated with what is taking place in the way that he's being leveraged and used. The right wing seems almost gleeful that Charlie Kirk was murdered. They seem gleeful about it because they seem to found a weapon, a cudgel, that they can effectively use to go after their political opposition and use it almost as a battle standard by which to go after Democrats or ostensibly the left. Let love live is not the conversation that we're having right now, Russell Brand. I understand you're in your Zen space. I get that. We are not in the Zen space. This is political warfare. And I don't mean that in a bullets and baton sense. I mean that in a sense of narrative, where the narrative is being fought over, what is going to be held true. And maybe truth doesn't matter that much anymore. I think it does, but maybe it doesn't in the grand scheme of things. People go into their political corners. So you have this one group of people who believe it was the war of northern aggression. You have this other group who believes it was a civil war. And each person can be in their own bubbles and have conversations with people who are in their bubbles and talk about it purely within the context of their bubble. So all of these other people are like, oh, he was a civil rights icon and the left just murdered him and blah, 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 blah. And he was a trans guy and this and that and this and that. That's the fight. It's not about whether or not a person can grieve. Obviously, a person can grieve. When I was on the show the other day, I defended his wife, saying she has a right to be angry. They murdered her husband. Anybody whose husband, child, family member that's been murdered, they are obviously going to be angry and they have every right to be angry. I've said before, if I get killed, I don't want my mama coming out talking about love and light. It's like, burn this shit down. This is our moment. This is the time. I get her anger on this. I'm assuming she loved her husband, just like I would assume any wife, any kid, or anybody else will love their family member or husband. I take no issue with her being angry and upset. I take no issue with her screaming bloody murder if she's coming on the podium. I would probably be that way too if somebody murdered a family member or my spouse. If I had a spouse, I'd feel that way if they murdered my dog. So I get it. It's not about that. It's about the way that they're using his memory and fashioning it into something else for political ends. This is a political argument. This is not a love and light argument. I hope Russell Brand gets that. This is no shade on Russell Brand. I understand what he's trying to do, and I appreciate this idea of, hey, we need to bring down the temperature. And can people who love Russell Brand, I don't think these people love Russell Brand at all, actually. I don't think you use a person like this to grandstand if you love him. But for all of these people who quote unquote love Russell Brand, can you accept how people feel and accept it with, you know, a certain amount of what do they call it? A British upper lip, or whatever they call it, a stiff upper lip. And can the other people kind of accept that other people are feeling some kind of way about it? Dude, yes. In one side, yes. But the left, you will have people who will march in the streets screaming F Charlie Kirk. You would have people who say bad things about Charlie Kirk. But those people are motivated by the way Charlie Kirk lived. I hope you get my point. This is not coming out of the ether. This is because Charlie Kirk has said a lot of shit over the course of his life that people didn't like. And when that guy was murdered, all of that was uncorked. I'm trying to make the point, though, that this is less about whether or not people have the right to grieve. They do. Full stop. It's not the issue. At least it's not the issue for me. I don't care about Charlie Kirk one way or the other. What I care about is having the narrative of somebody like Charlie Kirk being fashioned into somebody that's some kind of hero or some kind of figure to be revered or looked up to. That's my issue with this. So I understand where Russell Brand is coming from, but I think you're missing the point. I think you are missing the point. So, all right. I'm going to end this a bit early today. Because I still have to cut videos from yesterday, and I am dragging ass. Shout out to both of my guests, Laith Marouf, Dan Kavalik. If you get the opportunity, check out Dan's book when it comes out. It should be a really good book. I imagine it's going to be a gruesome book just because of what was taking place in regards to overthrow the Syrian government. And that stuff was taking place for decades. But at the very least, we could bear witness, I suppose. Yeah, at least we can bear witness. If you look, what is it? If you looked up to Charlton Heston, well, I don't look up to actors. They're just actors. They're pretending. At least that's my take. I don't. Yes, and I know as I'm saying this, somebody, when I was at home, if you look at my old videos, I have Data, Q, Worf. I have all those guys on my wall. So yes, I get that. I do get that. But I don't look up to them. I like the characters, if that makes sense. I'll tell you this. I had a conversation with, what is his name? It's the guy that plays Q on Star Trek. And this was at Comic-Con. I think my wife was with me on that one. Hancy. Why does Antsy keep coming to mind? Chansey or something like that, his name. But it's the guy who plays Q as a character. And he's like, I'm getting his autograph and I'm getting him to sign a picture. And he asked me, like, what do you do? And I said, I do media. I have a show. He says, do you? I said, yeah. And he gets very close to me and says, you know, we got to stop Trump from winning that election. And this breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. Oh, it breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, people can vote for who they vote for. It's none of my business. Like, dude, just because I like you doesn't mean I care about your point of view. And I don't want to tell him that. And I don't want to be very strong on that point. Like, dude, I like your character. That's it. Your point of view doesn't matter to me. I like your character. Snap your fingers for me like you. I don't need you to give your political wisdom. He was very insistent. You must stop Trump from winning the election. If I'm not mistaken, this was like the first time Trump was running. Yeah, I think this is the first time Trump was running. Oh, it broke my heart. It broke my heart. It broke my heart. Jamal has a booty call that he needs to attend. Riviera, I wish I would probably even tell you if that was true. It's like, I got to go get some tail. I got to get out of here. But no, that is not the case. This has been a very lonely trip. A very, very lonely trip. No, it's, you're isolated. You're in a fishbowl. Like, look, they used to send me on trips because I used to love to travel. I used to love to see how other cultures live and other people live. And it gives you more context on your own society when you see other people's society. And obviously, there are things that you like, there are things that you dislike. But usually those things are related to how you were raised. Like, you have biases, like anybody has biases, based on your cultural upbringing, how you were raised, where you were raised, what you were taught, those type of things. And you kind of just have to push those things to the side on some level and say, okay, well, yeah, I'm annoyed by this only because I was raised to be annoyed by this. And you just let it go and kind of enjoy the trip. It's deeply rewarding, but it's also very isolating. It's very isolating. Most of the conversations that I get are on the channel when I get the opportunity to talk to you guys or talk to guests. Depending upon the country that you're in, there's varying degrees of English that they speak. So the person who rents the house speaks English. I don't typically talk to my Airbnb person. And that's pretty much it here. It's very rare. There was a guy who I bummed a cigarette from. No, I don't smoke, but if I am in a mood, I might. That guy spoke English, shocked the hell out of me, because up to this point, nobody else spoke English. You may be able to say like nasi, and they would say rice. Yes, let me get rice. Or you may be able to say very basic things, but no conversations. Malaysia was a little bit different. Malaysia, people could English-ish, if that's a word. Hell, I was even able to have a coffee date in Malaysia, even though, again, the level of communication was very low. I could understand what she was saying. I don't know how much she could understand what I was saying. And Albania was iffy also. So rewarding but isolating. So no, there is no booty call associated with it. It's a Muslim country. I don't want my balls in a jar by hitting on somebody randomly. Yeah, not so much. I did find a chess club. That I did find. I did find a chess club. But not so much a booty call. Candace Owens is on every afternoon, has 250,000 live watchers. Yeah, she's huge. She is huge. Macron's wife is going to enjoy that show. Macron's wife is going to love having the Candace Owens show. I wonder, is she going to name it Bridget Macron? Or is she just going to keep the Candace Owens names and just show up like Ben Shapiro on TPS? Who knows? She is screwed. She is screwed. They are talking about putting out, which is so demoralizing and degrading on some level. But it's like, we are going to present to the court evidence that my wife is not a man. Imagine having to say that. Like, imagine having to say that. We are going to present evidence in court that my wife never has a penis. She never had a penis. She never had big, huge testicles. My wife never had a penis. It's like, ugh. Okay. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Yeah, that's unfortunate. By the same token, though, the moment that you prove that in court of law, she's toast. She is toast. Totally toast. He, she. No, it's a woman. She's a woman. It's a woman. Candace Owens is making that shit up. She's making it up. It's a woman. It's a woman. Oh, what is this? This is interesting. Feilu, Douglas Miller, that's clearly not true. My hatred for the West began after many years I settled in the West. Before I came to the West, I admired the West like most Chinese. It's still the case now. Oh, Feilu, that's so interesting. God, that's interesting. What you're telling me is you fell for the propaganda. And if you live here, you usually accept the propaganda. Unless you have a conscience, in which case you're bothered by your conscience. Velu, I understand where you're coming from. If you are an honest person with a conscience, you feel some kind of way. You feel some kind of way. So no, I do get it, Velu. I totally get it. You're so gullible, Jamal. Am I? Because I think she's a woman. Because I think she's a woman. It's like, oh, you're so gullible that you think she's a woman. They would totally put your balls in a jar. Yes. My uncle once asked me, I think I was in Egypt. And Egypt is even more intense than being in Indonesia. But he was like, hey, have you hit on any of the women there? I was like, I'm not putting my balls in a jar. Like, screw that. I'm not fucking around like that. You got to do that gently and slowly. Very gently and slowly. The COVID, like Malaysia was a little bit different because Malaysia had, I didn't even know the woman I went on a date with was a Muslim. I didn't even know she was Muslim. You have many people who wear hijabs, a few people who are burqas, a few who are Sikhs from India. Didn't see many Africans. Saw a few people from Japan. I had no idea she was a Muslim. And we were talking, and she was like, oh, I am a practicing Muslim. It's like, really? I'm always shocked when people tell me they're religious. I don't know why. I know they're religious people. I'm just always shocked when I meet them. And when you're having a conversation with them, I get more shocked. And sometimes I have to remind myself, oh, right, they believe in some entity. It's just strange to me. Even when I go, like, I remember my ex-wife and I went to my mom's church one time to watch her sing. She was doing a performance. Usually I wouldn't be caught dead in a church. But in this case, I went because my mom was singing. And it was such a weird experience. Like, you were watching people pray to an entity and sing to an entity. And if you ever really have a conversation with these people and be like, why do you believe this? It boils down to, what do you mean why I believe it? I was raised in the church. That's your only reason? One of the pastors one day, Lance Watson, and I don't think he understood the irony of the comment that he was making when he was giving this allegory. He said that the family members had grown up cutting half of a turkey, half of a ham, putting it in the oven to cook. And they would do this every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. Every year they did this, year after year after year. And they said, well, it makes the turkey, what makes the ham better. This is just the way to do it. This is the way to get the best flavor out of it. And one day they had the opportunity to talk to like their grandmother or something. And the grandmother was like, what are you talking about? We did that because the oven was too small. Meaning you guys have been cutting half of that ham or turkey for 20 years. When the reality of it, it didn't make it better. We just didn't have an oven that could accommodate a turkey or ham that size. I feel that way about religion. Or at the very least, when people say, well, I was raised in the church. I believe the Bible because it's the word of God. God wrote the Bible with his own hands. He was, wrote it with crayon. And then later on, they did so and so and so and so. No, it's always shocking to me. I don't think I went on it. Weirdly, I don't think I've ever been on a date with a Muslim. And so at that point, it was just radical curiosity. And it was kind of like, I don't see any dogs here. Yeah, we don't like dogs. It's part of the faith. We think they're dirty. And it's like, really? And she was like, yeah, cats are okay. It's like, what about the bacon? Why don't you guys like bacon? She was my person to ask all of these dumb American questions that I noticed while I was there that I didn't have an answer to. And she was very kind about it. She was very nice about it. She was cool as hell. I even have her phone number. We talk every so often, even now. No, she was cool people. She was cool people. She was upset when I left, actually, which felt good. Felt good. It's like an ego feeding thing for some reason. I'm a guy. It just is what it is. Just the man. Charlie Kirk rejected BB's final offer. Yes, that's true. The lie he could not refute. Yes, that's true. That is true. And I've gone through that, and I've attacked Ben Shapiro on Charlie Kirk's behalf for effectively fucking over Charlie Kirk in his death. Yeah, that was a lie he couldn't absorb. It was too much. It's too much. It's like, Jesus Christ, you guys have murdered 300,000 dead babies and you want me to back this? It's too much. Even he had his limits. It was like, I can't back that. I can't back that. It's too much. So yeah, he gets credit for that one. definitely gets credit. Arlene Chambers, Jamal, where are you now? It sounded like a lovely place. I am in Indonesia right now. I'm in Jakarta. Yeah, it's nice. I like it. Up to this point, I've liked everywhere that I've been. There have been challenges, but I've accommodated to all of the challenges that were presented to me. Some of were my own making. Dropping my phone. Oh God, that was a bitch. Falling and damaging, like spraining my arm in Albania. That was a bitch. Malaysia was different. Malaysia was weight gain, and I cannot peg that to anything. I have no idea what that was about. But Malaysia was great also. Indonesia was great. But I got to be honest with you, I've liked most of the places I've traveled, especially in Asia. Vietnam was awesome. China was gorgeous. I've only been to China for 12 hours, so take that with a grain of salt. But no, I've liked Malaysia. It's very earthy, if that doesn't make sense. It's very, Malaysia is very Americanized. I'll say it that way. You know you're in Malaysia. You know you're in a Muslim country. You know you're in a different country. But it's very like Taco Bell, McDonald's, Burger King, Domino's, Starbucks. It's very Americanized. Indonesia is not that way. It's just not that way. There are those restaurants here, so it's not that. But you don't see them on every corner. You get around with motorbikes. Little to no traffic laws that I've noticed. I mean, maybe it's just scale of reference. The people are kind, very nice. I like the prayers. Yeah. So far I've liked it. So far I've enjoyed it, Arlene. No complaints. No complaints, no complaints, no complaints. Balls look much better for tourists. Oh, Bali looks much better for tourists. Yes, but Bali is expensive. Bali is expensive. Keep in mind, this trip wasn't about taking a trip. Like, the goal wasn't, hey, let's go traveling around. It wasn't that. It was, I need to save money. I need to save money now. And when I found an apartment in Albania for $300, it's like, hey, that's an apartment for $300, paying fucking $1,200. No, $1,600 in the States. And one thing kind of led to another, where the travel bug just kind of bit. And it's like, hey, can I do both? Can I save and see the world? Can I do both? So it became that. So it's not about, you know, if that was the case, I would have been in Russia right now. I would have been in China right now. I would have been parts of Europe right now. No. And to be honest, if that was the case, I would have just stayed home. In my mind, when I went back to Richmond, my mind was, I'm too old to travel, and I'm probably not going to do it again. That was my mindset. That was my thoughts. And so I just kind of accepted, all right, you're going to be 48 this year. You're getting old. You're back home. You haven't been back home in 5 or 6 years. Enjoy it. But being back home is expensive. I mean, like, especially for me, when you know where everything is. Like, when you know where Kabuto's is, when you know where your weed spot is, because marijuana is legal in Richmond. When you know where your favorite food places are, then at that point, you're stuck in this dilemma of A, the rent is too expensive. B, the car is too expensive. And C, I need to also now control myself for all of these luxury items. And they're not luxury items, but they're expensive if you enjoy partaking of those things. It's the worst possible outcome. Like, that's just fucking horrible. And so when you're somewhere where you are isolated, for me, I can give up those things pretty quickly when they're not around. I may lust after those things every so often, but easy to give them up when you don't have them. It's not that way in the States. It's not that way when you know everything is. When the place, when you know where the place that has your favorite potato salad, your favorite, God, I experience this stuff through food. Your favorite, what is that stuff called? Sweet potatoes or yams, especially candy yams. When you know the place that has your favorite country ham, your favorite Japanese food, it is hard to restrain yourself. It is hard to restrain yourself. So you go to somewhere where they don't have those things. They don't even know what those things are. And being very choicey about your food choices, you end up eating like rice. It's like you can lose weight and travel on the cheap. No, it's weed is legal here, and I am consuming currently. You lucky bastard. You lucky bastard. No, it's not legal here. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in Malaysia, you could be executed for it, for drugs. I don't know about here, but I'm not taking that risk. I don't even know where you could get it from here. So yeah. Growing your own ain't as easy as it looks. No, it is not. No, it is not, Jack Klugman. No, it is not. Geisha Girl Scouts. Geisha Girl Scouts? Geisha? That's the Japanese thing. I don't know if that's a thing in Indonesia, but fair enough. 20 years for weed in Indonesia. Are you serious? That is outrageous. That is outrageous. Apply for residency in Russia. That's just it. Look, my angst, honestly, against the United States has to do with the fact that they're run by sociopaths and psychopaths. I don't hate the US. I hate who runs the US and the policies that the US activates. The people annoy the shit out of me at times just because they go along with that stuff. But they have been heavily propagandized to go along with that stuff. My framing of the world is America. This is the James Baldwin argument, right? James Baldwin had the debate with Malcolm X. And in that debate, James Baldwin, I would argue, ate Malcolm X alive. And one of the main points he made to him is like, this dude, if you could pack up your skis and leave tomorrow, meaning if you, all of your Nation of Islam, can leave tomorrow and go to another place, your frame of reference will still be America. You can't get it out of you. It is in your veins. It is who you are. It's like, that is a hard thing to kind of unravel. James Baldwin is right. So there may be other places that I want to stay for a while, that I even want to live for an extended period of time. But my country is the States. You know, my frame of reference, family, all of these people in the States. My cousin, my uncle who taught me how to tie a tie, Junie. My cousin who drove me to the airport and smoked 2 bowls with me on the way to the airport. I haven't been that high in a very long time. Shout out to you, Chris. That's my frame of reference, right? So, yeah. I mean, it would be nice to stay. I would like to visit, maybe visit for an extended period of time. But live is different to me. Live is different to me. No, I just think my government is full of sociopaths, psychopaths. China gives you a 5-year visa with no strings. Really, Kirk? I didn't know that. I did not know that. I like Baldwin as an essay writer. I like him as a speaker too. Oh, his speeches are fantastic. His speeches are fantastic. Jamal, it would be cool to have a blunt with you, a blunt in rotation. Dr. Nick Riviera, I would, yes. I don't know who you are, but you watch the show, so I'm assuming there's a Venn diagram around there. I have met guests, by the way. I have met guests or people who watch the show. There was one guy, a German cat. Actually, he was American, but he was living in Germany. And he found out that I was in Germany, and he sent me an email. He says, yo, I heard you're in Germany. Let's hang out. Now, this would make some people cringe because they would be like, that guy could be an axe murderer. That guy could be a cannibal. He's going to eat you alive. That guy was cool as hell. That guy was like a microbiologist. I went to this show in Germany, and after I left the show in Germany, I met him at this bar in the middle of nowhere. And I'm walking like, oh, fuck, I'm going to get murdered. Then I found the bar, and he introduced me to his friends that were in the bar. We drunk alcohol and smoked all night till like 4 in the morning. Drunk and smoked all night. That was a great, great night. That was a damn good night. So yeah, I have met some of my people. Jamal, can you imagine an end of the U.S. support for Israel Gaza campaign? Yes. When the United States collapses. Yes. What is this? Zerluka? Yes. When the U.S. government collapses. When it falls into chaos. At that point, Israel will be no more. Because a country of 8 million people won't be able to defend themselves against their neighbors. And nobody's going to give a shit that the U.S. is going to drop nukes on them. So yes, it will collapse on its own. It will collapse on its own. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. The rub is whether or not that happens before they murder every last man, woman, child, dog, cat in Gaza. That's the rub, and I don't have an answer for that. I have to say Russian women are far too, what is this? I have to say the Russian women are far the most beautiful. Flavors of Kool-Aid. That sounds misogynistic. What I mean by that, there are attractive women everywhere. There just are. And each have their own, there are attractive women everywhere. It's not a specific thing. Like here, I mean, some of the women are gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. Same thing was true in Malaysia. Same thing was true in less so in Albania, but same thing is true in Albania. Albania has I'm not going to bash Albania. There is a harder look to the people in Albania. That's all I mean by that. But you have attractive women everywhere. It's like Russia doesn't have the corner of attractive women. I mean, look at that kook, Kalis. Look at that kook. She's attractive. She's nuts, but she's attractive. Same thing with Vietnam. It's just anywhere you go. Western women lose their beauty because they're entitled. Not all that colors. Entitled. I don't know what that means. I don't know what you mean by that. I think there are attractive women everywhere. It's not a specific thing. It's not. Look, I've said before, my ex-wife was Black. All of the women that I've dated before I married were Black. After my ex-wife, I apparently went to my opposite, like I suppose everybody does, because she did the exact same thing. She was Austrian. The woman I went on the lunch date with, she was Malaysian. I don't have a taste like that. I'm across the board. So I think they're everywhere. I don't think any country corners the market on attractive women. So I could be wrong. You can prove me wrong. You might be able to prove me wrong. But Foment Dissident, I appreciate your work, but more importantly, the top two most useful superpowers practically. Reading minds, one. At least that would be practical to me, because I have I don't know if it's insecurity or what, but it helps me when I can read people. In which case, I tend to be in people's heads a lot. When I can't read people, I don't know what's going on in the relationship or the situation. And I don't just trust what people tell me. Usually, in fact, I distrust what they tell me. So yeah, reading minds would help. And teleportation. Think of how much money you can save on flights. Maybe compulsion. Yeah, compulsion. Because you can get free flights with compulsion. So yes, Foment Dissident. Reading minds and compulsion. Effectively, Professor Xavier. Professor Xavier. You can trust me, Jamal, Mystic City. Mystic, I'm not distrustful as a rule. I'm not. I became that way from doing politics on some level, but I'm not distrustful as a rule. But what the person says has to line up with what's happening. And if there's any contradiction between what's being said versus what's being done, I'm going to just trust them. I'm going to trust what they do, not what they say. That's, as a rule, I'm just that way. Now, they may have different reasons for doing what they're doing that I interpret incorrectly, in which case I may ask. But even then, you're stuck with this thing of, do you trust what the person is telling you in that situation? I don't know. Is what it is. Is what it is. Do you believe in something divine? Gabriel, Tai Chi, Chanel? Yes. Not in a God on a cloud, but yeah. I mean, some of the stuff you can explore yourself, consciousness stuff, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming. I believe there are what people call guides, even though I don't know what it is. But a lot of the stuff is from direct experience with that stuff. I mean, God, man, I had weird experiences as a kid. I used to have stuff coming into the room when I was asleep, tugging at the covers. Those weird sad phenomenon between my mom and I at times where she was under a lot of stress that I didn't know about as a child. Spirit guide stuff, OBs, remote viewing. Yeah, I believe in that stuff, but it's not really a belief. You can validate it. Belief goes out the window when you can validate it. I need validation stuff. That's all. It's like you telling me something and I just believe it doesn't get me anywhere, if that makes sense. So yes, whether you call it divine or whether you call it just a fact of nature. I mean, I would argue it's just part of nature. I don't think there is such thing as a supernatural. I think all of these things are real at some level. It's just, it's not a normal everyday experience. It's not the way we engage the world, but it's still part of, let's say, reality in this case. So yes, I do touch you. All right. I am going to call it a day. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. You're right. It is a lag in this video slightly. It's like half a second. You guys have a good day. You're fantastic. And I'll see you Monday morning. Actually, I will see you, well, Sunday for me, Saturday for you. So I'll see you Saturday. Be safe, guys. And be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Also, thank all of you for supporting this show. Like it, share it, subscribe to it. You can always support it. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, memberships, buy me a coffee, all of that stuff. I hate having to say it, but it's part of the job. Otherwise, we don't have a show. You guys have a fantastic day. Be safe. Try to be kind. Have a good one.